The courtroom was silent. The judge looked down at the document, then back at the man. "The DNA results are conclusive," she said. The man didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the 3 children he had raised his entire life. And then he asked one question no one expected. Kenneth Brennan stood in courtroom 4B, 52 years old, wearing his only suit, the same one he'd worn to his wedding 22 years ago to Diane. The woman sitting across the room, not looking at him, the mother of his 3 children, Tyler, 20 years old, college student, Sophie, 17, high school senior, Lucas, 14, middle school. All 3 sitting in the gallery, confused, scared, watching their parents' marriage end in court. This was supposed to be simple, a divorce, after 22 years. No one's fault, just grown apart, that's what the papers said. They'd agreed on everything, split the house, split the savings, joint custody of Lucas. The older 2 were adults. But then, during the asset negotiation, Diane's lawyer had said something that changed everything. "Your Honor, before we finalize the division of assets, my client has concerns about the college funds, specifically whether Mr. Brennan should have access to funds designated for children who may not be." Raymond Mitchell, Diane's lawyer, had paused, deliberately. Ken's lawyer had stood immediately. "Objection. What is counsel implying?" Raymond had smiled, cold, professional. "I'm simply suggesting that before we divide assets meant for the children's education, we should establish paternity." The courtroom had gone silent. Ken had turned to Diane. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "Diane!" Ken's voice had been quiet, confused. "What is he talking about?" Diane had said nothing. "Your Honor," Raymond continued, "my client has reason to believe that Mr. Brennan may not be the biological father of one or more of the children. She requests court-ordered DNA testing before finalizing asset distribution." Judge Patricia Monroe had looked at Diane. "Mrs. Brennan, are you certain you want to pursue this?" Diane had nodded, still not looking at Ken. "Yes, Your Honor." Ken had felt the floor tilt. 22 years, 3 children, and now this. "I don't understand," Ken had said. "Diane, what?" But she wouldn't look at him, wouldn't speak, just sat there while her lawyer destroyed everything. The judge had ordered the tests, all 3 children, Ken and Diane. 2 weeks later, they were back in court for the results. Ken had barely slept, couldn't eat. The kids had been asking questions he couldn't answer. Tyler had been angry. Why would Mom do this? Why would she question? He couldn't finish. Sophie had been quieter, withdrawn. Lucas had cried, "Dad, are you still my dad?" "Always," Ken had told him, "no matter what any test says, always." But now, standing in the courtroom, waiting for the judge to read the results, Ken wasn't sure of anything. Judge Monroe opened the envelope, read. Her face changed. She looked at Ken, then at Diane, then at the 3 children in the gallery. "I'm going to read these results," she said quietly, "and I want to remind everyone that DNA does not determine family. Love does. Biology does not make a parent. Commitment does." She paused. "That said, the court ordered these tests, and I must report the findings." Ken's hands were shaking. The DNA test comparing Kenneth Brennan to Tyler Brennan shows 0 genetic match. Kenneth Brennan is not Tyler's biological father. Tyler's gasp was audible. Ken closed his eyes. The DNA test comparing Kenneth Brennan to Sophie Brennan shows 0 genetic match. Kenneth Brennan is not Sophie's biological father. Sophie's sob echoed. The DNA test comparing Kenneth Brennan to Lucas Brennan shows 0 genetic match. Kenneth Brennan is not the biological father of any of the 3 children. The courtroom erupted. Ken couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 20 years, Tyler's first steps, Sophie's first day of school, Lucas learning to ride a bike. Every birthday, every Christmas, every scraped knee and bad dream and parent-teacher conference. None of them his, biologically. Ken turned to Diane. She was crying, head down, still wouldn't look at him. "How long have you known?" Ken's voice was barely a whisper. Diane didn't answer. "How long?" "Since the beginning." Her voice was broken. Since before they were born. The courtroom went silent again. All three? Ken could barely form the words. Diane nodded. The same father? Another nod. Ken felt like he was drowning. Who? Diane's lawyer started to object, but the judge cut him off. Mrs. Brennan, you owe him that much. Who is the biological father? Diane's voice was so quiet they almost couldn't hear. Derek Shaw, the plumber who did work on our house 23 years ago. Ken remembered. The young guy, early 20s, had installed our new water heater, been at the house for a week. Ken had been working, double shifts, trying to save for their future, while she... 23 years, Ken said. You've known for 23 years, and you never told me. I'm sorry. You let me raise them, love them, believe they were mine. They are yours. You knew. Ken's voice cracked. Every birthday, every Father's Day, every time they called me Dad, you knew. Diane was sobbing now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but then Tyler was born, and you loved him so much, and I couldn't. So you lied for 20 years. I was scared. Scared. Ken's laugh was bitter. I was their father. I was there. Every night, every morning, every moment. And it was all a lie? It wasn't a lie. What was it then? The judge intervened. Mr. Brennan, I understand you're upset, but perhaps we should take a recess. No, Ken's voice was firm. I want to finish this. He turned to the gallery, to his 3 children. Tyler was staring at him, face wet with tears. Sophie was shaking. Lucas looked terrified. Dad? Lucas's voice was small, broken. Ken looked at them. These 3 people he'd raised, who didn't share his DNA, who were strangers biologically. By the way, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. I love knowing where these stories reach. And that's when Ken realized they weren't strangers. Tyler, who'd come to him crying at age 7 because kids at school said he was weird for liking art. Ken had sat with him, told him being different was a gift, enrolled him in art classes. Tyler was at art school now, thriving. Sophie, who'd broken her arm at age 10 falling off her bike, Ken had held her hand all night in the emergency room, telling her stories, making her laugh through the pain. She still came to him first when she was scared. Lucas, who had been bullied in 6th grade for being small, Ken had taught him to stand tall, to be brave, to know his worth. Lucas had grown into the kindest kid Ken knew. These 3 people Ken had raised, who he'd loved, who he'd been there for, every single day for 20 years. The DNA didn't matter. It never had. Ken turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I have a question. Yes, Mr. Brennan? These DNA results, do they change my legal status as their father? The judge looked at the papers. You're listed on all 3 birth certificates. You've raised them their entire lives. You've been their father in every legal and practical sense. The DNA results don't automatically change your parental rights. However, she paused, if you choose to contest paternity, to remove yourself from financial or legal responsibility, the court would likely grant that, given these findings. The courtroom waited. Ken could walk away from the lie, from the betrayal, from the children who weren't his blood. But Ken wasn't looking at the judge. He was looking at Tyler, Sophie, Lucas, 3 faces he'd known longer than any others, 3 people who needed him, who had always needed him. Your Honor, Ken said quietly, I don't want to contest anything. Mr. Brennan, they are my children. Ken's voice was stronger now. Not biologically, I understand that now, but in every way that matters, they're mine. He turned to face Tyler, Sophie, Lucas. I was there the day each of you was born. Tyler, you came 3 weeks early. I drove 90 miles an hour to the hospital. You were so small, 4 pounds. I was terrified to hold you. Tyler was crying. Sophie, you were born at home. Surprise. The midwife barely made it. I caught you, literally. You came into this world in my hands. Sophie covered her mouth, sobbing. Lucas was the easiest, but you wouldn't stop crying for 3 months. I walked with you every night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., didn't matter. I was there. Lucas was shaking. I taught you to walk, to talk, to ride bikes,
to swim, to tie your shoes, to read. Ken's voice was breaking. I was there for every nightmare, every fever, every heartbreak, every triumph. He looked at Diane, then back at the kids. Your mother lied to me, that's true, and that hurts more than I can say. But you three, you didn't lie. You didn't know, and you don't deserve to lose your father because of someone else's mistake. I'm not walking away. I don't care what the DNA says. You're my children. You've always been my children, and I will always be your dad. The courtroom was completely silent, except for crying. Tyler stood, pushed past the gallery railing, walked to Ken. Dad, I'm sorry, Ken said. I'm sorry you had to hear this. I'm sorry your mother and I couldn't make it work, but I'm not sorry I'm your father. I never will be.
Tyler collapsed into Ken's arms, sobbing. Sophie ran to them, then Lucas. All four of them holding each other in the middle of the courtroom. A family, not by blood, but by choice. Judge Monroe was crying. I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've never seen anything like this. She looked at Diane. Mrs. Brennan, you asked for this DNA test, presumably to reduce Mr. Brennan's claim to marital assets, to the college funds, to custody. Diane couldn't speak. Well, you failed, because what this test has proven is not that Mr. Brennan isn't their father, but that he's a better father than most biological parents I see. The judge turned to Ken. Mr. Brennan, do you want full custody of Lucas? Ken looked down. Lucas was still holding on to him. If that's what Lucas wants, yes. Lucas? The judge addressed the 14-year-old directly. Who do you want to live with? Lucas didn't hesitate. Dad. And you're certain? He's the only parent who's ever been really there. The judge made notes. Then I'm granting primary custody to Kenneth Brennan. Mrs. Brennan will have visitation rights, pending counseling. She looked at the older children. Tyler, Sophie, you're both adults, or nearly. I suspect you'll make your own choices about relationships with your parents. Tyler nodded. I already have. Sophie squeezed Ken's hand. The judge continued. As for the assets, the college funds were created by Mr. Brennan from his earnings over 20 years. The DNA results don't change that he earned that money or that he intended it for these children. Those funds remain under Mr. Brennan's control for the children's education as originally intended. Diane's lawyer started to object. The judge held up a hand. Counsel, I suggest your client count her blessings. Mr. Brennan could sue for fraud, for emotional distress, for 20 years of child support based on false pretenses. Instead, he's choosing to continue being a father to children who aren't biologically his. That's not something to fight. That's something to be grateful for. The judge looked at Ken. Mr. Brennan, this court recognizes you as the legal father of Tyler, Sophie, and Lucas Brennan, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Thank you, Your Honor. No, thank you for reminding us what family really means. The hearing ended. People filed out, but Ken and the kids stayed, sitting in the front row. I don't understand, Sophie said quietly. Why would you still want us after finding out? Finding out what? Ken interrupted gently. That you don't have my DNA? So what? But you're not, what? My kids? Ken smiled, sad but warm. Sophie, you are exactly my kid. You have been since the day you were born. But the test tells me about biology. It doesn't tell me about love, about commitment, about who changed your diapers and helped with homework and taught you to drive. Tyler spoke up. Aren't you angry at Mom? Yes, Ken admitted. I'm furious at your mother for lying, for stealing my choice, for letting me believe something that wasn't true. But I'm not angry at you three. You're the victims here as much as I am. What about the guy, the plumber? He's nothing, Ken said firmly. He contributed DNA, that's all. I contributed everything else. Will we have to meet him? Sophie sounded scared. Not if you don't want to. That's up to you. You're old enough to decide. I don't want to, Lucas said immediately. Me neither, Sophie agreed. Tyler was quiet. Then, maybe someday. I don't know. I'm curious, but
He looked at Ken. "He's not my dad. You are. That won't change." Ken pulled Tyler close. "Then we won't worry about it. Not today. Today we just—" His voice broke. "Today we just be grateful we have each other." "What time is it where you are? Morning? Night? Let me know in the comments." They sat there, the four of them, until the courthouse closed. Diane had left hours ago, with her lawyer, ashamed, defeated. Ken knew he'd have to deal with her eventually, figure out visitation, co-parenting, the divorce, but not today. Today was for his kids. The next few weeks were hard. The story had leaked. Small town, people talked. Some supported Ken, called him a hero. Others said he was crazy. Why raise another man's children? Ken didn't care what they thought. Tyler went back to college, but called every day. "Just checking in, Dad, making sure you're okay." "I'm okay, son. You focus on school." Sophie struggled. Teenagers at school knew. Some were cruel. She came home crying. "They're saying I'm not really a Brennan, that I'm—" "You're Sophie Brennan, my daughter. Anyone who says different is wrong and stupid. But technically, there's no technically. You're my daughter, period. End of discussion." Lucas had it worst. 14 is a brutal age. The bullying was relentless. "Your dad's not even your real dad. He stayed because he's too stupid to leave. Your mom was sleeping with the plumber." Ken wanted to pull Lucas from school, homeschool him, protect him, but Lucas refused. "I'm not hiding, Dad. You didn't hide from the truth. Neither will I." Ken had never been more proud. 3 months after the hearing, Derek Shaw showed up, the biological father. Ken opened the door, saw a man he barely remembered, older now, 45 maybe, nervous. "Kenneth Brennan? That's me. I'm Derek Shaw. I don't know if you remember." "I remember. What do you want?" "I heard about the DNA test, about the kids." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know, I swear. Diane never told me. I moved away 22 years ago, never knew she was pregnant." "Okay. I was thinking, maybe I could meet them, the kids. They're mine too, and—" "No." Ken's voice was ice. "They're not yours. You donated sperm, that's all." "But biologically—" "Biology doesn't make you a father. I learned that the hard way. I have rights. You have nothing." Ken stepped forward. "You weren't there at 3 a.m. when they were sick. You didn't teach them to read. You didn't sit through school plays and soccer games and band concerts. You didn't hold them when they cried. You didn't help with homework. You didn't pay for braces and field trips and college funds. You did nothing for 20 years. You don't get to show up now and claim them. The law says I'm their father. I'm on their birth certificates. I've raised them their entire lives. You have no legal claim." Derek's face hardened. "I could sue for visitation, for paternity rights. You could try, but I've got 3 kids who don't want to meet you, a judge who ruled in my favor, and a very good lawyer." Ken leaned in. "Go ahead, spend your money, traumatize my children, try to force your way into their lives. But I promise you, you'll lose. And even if you win some court-ordered visit, they'll hate you because you put them through it." Derek stared at him. "I just want to know my kids. They're not your kids. They're mine." Ken started to close the door. "And if you really cared about them, you'd leave them alone. Let them have peace." Derek left, never came back. Ken was grateful. 6 months later, Tyler graduated college, art degree, first in the family. The whole family was there. Ken, Tyler, Sophie, Lucas, even some cousins and aunts and uncles. Diane wasn't invited. Tyler had made that choice. During his speech, Tyler thanked his professors, his friends, and then, most importantly, "I want to thank my dad, Kenneth Brennan." The audience applauded. 6 months ago, my world fell apart. I found out that the man I'd called Dad my entire life wasn't related to me, not by blood. The room went quiet. People knew the story. I thought that would change everything, that we'd lose him, that he'd leave. Tyler's voice broke. But he didn't. He chose us, even though he didn't have to, even though we didn't share DNA. He chose to be our dad. And that taught me more than any biology class, more than any art class, more than anything. It taught me that family isn't about DNA, it's about choice, about showing up, about loving people even when it's hard. Dad, you didn't have to stay, but you did, and that makes you more of a dad than biology ever could. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished is because you believed in me, supported me, loved me. So thank you for being the dad who chose me. That means more than the dad I was assigned by genetics. Tyler graduated with honors, got a job at a design firm, and moved into his own apartment, but still called Ken every week. Sophie graduated high school a year later, valedictorian. She gave a similar speech about choice, about love, about the man who stayed. Ken cried through both graduations, proud, grateful, blessed. Lucas was thriving too. High school now, making friends, playing basketball. The bullying had stopped. Once kids realized Lucas didn't care, that he was proud of his dad, that Ken's choice made him special, not damaged. 3 years after the divorce, Ken ran into Diane at the grocery store. She looked older, tired. Ken. Diane. Awkward silence. How are the kids? They're good. Tyler's working. Sophie's at college. Lucas is a sophomore. Do they... She couldn't finish. Do they ask about you? Diane nodded. Ken was honest. Sometimes. Sophie mentions you occasionally. Lucas asks why you did it. Tyler... He paused. Tyler's the angry...
Diane's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, I've said it before, but I don't think I've ever really... She broke down. I destroyed everything. Our marriage, your trust, the kids' respect for me. I was scared and selfish, and I made the worst mistake of my life, and I don't know how to fix it. Ken felt nothing. No anger anymore. No love either. Just nothing. I don't think you can fix it, Diane. Some things are broken beyond repair. But the kids, they need a mother. They have aunts. They have Sophie, who's like a mom to Lucas. They have people who love them. Ken's voice was gentle but firm. What they don't have is trust in you. You lied to them for their entire lives. That's not something that heals quickly. Is there anything I can do? Time, therapy, respect their boundaries. If they reach out, be there, but don't push. And Tyler? Tyler's an adult. That's his choice, not mine, not yours. Diane nodded, broken. Ken, for what it's worth, you're an amazing father. The kids are lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. And he meant it. 5 years after the DNA test, Lucas graduated high school. He'd been accepted to the same art school as Tyler, following in his brother's footsteps. At graduation, Lucas gave a speech as senior class president. When I was 14, my parents got divorced, and I found out my dad wasn't my biological father. In one day, my entire identity shifted. Everything I thought I knew changed. I watched my dad, Kenneth Brennan, stand in a courtroom and learn that he'd been lied to for 20 years, that the 3 kids he'd raised weren't biologically his. And I watched him choose us anyway. Lucas paused, looked at Ken in the audience. My classmates know this story. Some of you made fun of me for it, called my dad stupid for staying, called my family fake. But here's what I learned. Biology is random. You don't choose your DNA. It just happens. But love is a choice. Every single day, my dad chose to love me, even when he didn't have to, even when I wasn't his blood. That's not weakness, that's strength. And that's what I want to say to my classmates as we graduate and go into the world. Choose your family. Don't let biology or obligation dictate your relationships. Choose the people who show up for you, who support you, who love you even when it's hard. Because that's what makes a family, not DNA, but choice. The audience stood, applauded. Ken cried, again. That night, the whole family gathered. Ken, Tyler, Sophie, Lucas, Tyler's girlfriend, Sophie's boyfriend. They ate dinner, laughed, told stories. At one point, Tyler raised a glass. To Dad, the man who taught us what family really means. To Dad, they all echoed. Ken looked around the table at these people he loved, who loved him, and realized the DNA test was the worst thing that ever happened to him, and the best. It destroyed his marriage, exposed lies, caused pain, but it also proved something, that love is stronger than biology, that choice is more powerful than genetics, that being a father isn't about DNA, it's about showing up every day for 20 years, and then, even when you find out they're not yours, showing up anyway, because they are yours in every way that matters. The lesson? Family isn't defined by DNA, it's defined by choice, by commitment, by love. Kenneth Brennan could have walked away, could have felt betrayed, could have abandoned the 3 children who weren't biologically his. No one would have blamed him, but he didn't, because he understood something most people miss. Being a parent isn't about biology, it's about being there. And Ken had been there, every day, for 20 years. The DNA test didn't change that. It couldn't, because love isn't genetic, it's chosen. And Ken chose his kids every day for the rest of his life. If this story moved you, share it. And remember, the next time you wonder what makes a family, it's not blood, it's not DNA, it's choice, it's showing up, it's loving people even when it's hard, even when you don't have to, even when every reason says you should walk away. That's family. That's what Kenneth Brennan taught his 3 children, not through genetics, but through choice. And that's a lesson more powerful than any DNA test could ever provide.